Greetings, all. Welcome to Aquarian Diary. I'm your host, John Irving. It is April 26th, 2023. Please note that a lot of this was recorded a few days ago. It took me a few days to get around to editing it and publishing it. Well, do we live in interesting times or not? Today, Tucker Carlson got the boot. Who'd have thought that? I can't help but think that many of the things I've been talking about here on my channel in the past, quite some time ago in fact, such as Pluto in Aquarius and Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn, are coming to pass. There's so many things happening, it's incredible. And I think there's going to be a lot more. A lot of accountability, a lot of karma. In fact, my episode on Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn was subtitled A Karmic Reckoning. Bring it on. A couple quick housekeeping notes. I have published 4 shorts on intentions that you can set or include in your spiritual practice, which I encourage every human being on the planet to do, if possible. That would be wonderful. Those are in a playlist titled Intentions on YouTube, and they are also on my website. They're really easy, and trust me, they're very powerful. A lot of the people who listen to my channel are very powerful beings. Use it for the greater good. What I want to talk about today is something I have been contemplating a lot recently, and this is kind of apropos given that Mercury is currently just retrograde in Taurus. I'm actually a bit nervous about publishing anything during Mercury retrograde because I'm afraid I'll end up regretting it. But I can't keep my mouth shut for a month. And then there was the eclipse at 29 degrees Aries. That energy was nuts. For like a whole week, it was just crazy. It seems to be settling down now, thank God. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today here was that I have been doing a lot of contemplation about what exactly is going on here on Earth. This period of time has been extraordinary and really crazy. We have this incredible polarization. I also published an episode titled Polarization Is Intensifying, contrary to what I think a lot of people rationally assumed would happen. For example, that things would settle down and we would kind of go back to normal. And that episode about polarization increasing contradicts that notion. I think even myself, I had kind of assumed that things would settle down over time as the astrology changed eventually. But I don't think that's actually what's happening. So I've been contemplating that a lot. There's another phenomenon that's been going on for me lately, which is that if I contemplate something or have a question, it seems I get an answer to it really quickly, or at least much more quickly than I did in the past. The answer will just kind of show up. So like I said, I've been contemplating what the heck is going on. And one of the things that came to my mind is that one of the defining characteristics between, say, the right and the left politically is that people on the right seem to be people who are really strongly wed to some form of ideology, whether it's economic, political, social, or so forth. And it also seems that they believe that the people on the left are also ideologues, which I don't actually think is true. I myself am not actually married to any particular ideology. In other words, a framework of beliefs that are laid down in some kind of dogmatic fashion. What I tend to do, and I think this is probably true for most of the people who listen to my channel, is that I will absorb and take in ideas that resonate with me. In other words, they make sense logically, rationally, intellectually, energetically, and so on. And I will evolve over time as I learn new things. I do not have a rigid dogma about reality. So assuming that what I'm saying is true, then the next question is, why do certain people need to have an ideology? a framework. It could be religion or whatever. I myself am not religious, nor have I ever been. And on those occasions where I have explored various worldviews or philosophies, if I come across something that doesn't resonate with me or that fails some kind of rational test, like, for example, there's a statement that I just simply disagree with, I will not park my brain and just pretend that that didn't occur. In other words, if it's not rational, it's not going to work for me. I will question everything all the time, constantly. I have an open mind. And even in science, people think science is very rigid, but not really, because when new evidence emerges, and there is at least some level of consensus about it, or data that can substantiate it and hold up to scrutiny, scientists will adjust their understanding as well. It's built in to the principles of science. It's the scientific method, good science at least. Whereas, like I said, there's a whole segment of society who will reject evidence and reality if it conflicts with their ideology. That way of being is so foreign to me that I can't even imagine being like that. I can't imagine living like that. And furthermore, I don't understand why anyone would want to live like that. There has to be an upside to being wed to an ideology. And I think what it does is that it offers people a framework for making sense of what is actually very complex. It kind of simplifies it for them and therefore gives them a way of coping with reality. Reality is not black and white. There's many shades of gray. And some people apparently believe or feel that things need to be black and white or simplified. As we know, many things are changing in the world right now. Social values, cultural norms, the planet itself is changing. We have emerging cultures, and other countries around the world now are advancing in all kinds of ways. The world is constantly shifting and changing, and I don't personally have a problem with that. Obviously, my preference would be that we don't have authoritarian countries rise to some significant level of prominence, and I have a strong sense of ethics about not harming other people and egalitarianism and things like that. But I'm not opposed to change, and yet there's a huge segment of society that is. And if we go back into the past, a lot of the past really sucked. Like, think of the early part of the 20th century. There were world wars. We do not want to repeat those kinds of things. We do not want to go back into the past. If you go back into the 1960s, racism and segregation and all of those kinds of things were much more prevalent than they are today. Women didn't have rights that they do today. Who wants to go back there? I certainly don't. And if I was a racial minority or an ethnic minority or a woman, I certainly wouldn't either. But there's this curious phenomenon, it seems like a common denominator, about ideology, whether it's, like I said, social, political, economic, religious, or whatever. There's a need for dogma. I personally have no place or need for dogma. So I don't really know what the answer is there, but like I said, that's what came through to me. And I'm throwing it out there just for people to ponder and think about. What is this relationship between the need for ideology or dogma and people who are strongly resistant to change and evolution? Because I don't really understand it. Some have said that younger souls are the ones who need those more rigid frameworks for dealing with reality just because they have less experience in these dimensions. And that older souls are much more compassionate and empathic because they've been through a lot of challenging experiences in past incarnations. And so they can empathize with people who are facing discrimination because of their race or gender or whatever. And that makes sense to me. But I still don't really completely understand the need for rigid paradigms. And maybe it's just because, possibly, that it's been so long since I was like that myself that I don't even remember. Maybe I would have to go back, I don't know, many, many lifetimes before I was in that state. It just seems very foreign to me. And I have a sense that it would seem very foreign to many of you as well. But again, I'm just pointing out that it seems to be a common denominator, and it's something worth contemplating. It is no exaggeration, nor is it hyperbole, to state that millions, if not hundreds of millions, of people have died in the past over conflicts that were ideologically based. Think of the Great Wars or religious crusades. Yes, power was a factor, but there was also ideology. Think of the former USSR or China. I could give countless examples. And many have stated and argued that that is a manifestation of the Piscean Age energy, during which time people looked to structures and belief systems, if not saviors, outside of themselves for solutions and to effectively abdicate their own personal responsibility for their actions. Again, I myself have never done that. I've never been tribalistic in that way. It's foreign to me, like I keep saying. But nonetheless, the consequences of that paradigm being dominant have been calamitous for humanity. Like even the unwillingness for people to accept that we are destroying our biosphere. People are in hard denial about this reality, even though the evidence is blatantly obvious. They refuse to accept that this is actually occurring. It's quite bizarre. It's an incredible form of denial of reality. Again, I've also talked a lot about that here before as well. There was an article, for example, in the New York Times recently that I shared on my community tab, which was talking about the debt ceiling and what the Republicans really wanted more than anything else was for the Biden administration to back off on its green initiatives and increase domestic fossil fuel production, which is directly counter to the best interests of the planet. In other words, it's not about the culture war bullshit. The culture war is just a ruse. It's to keep the base motivated, to feed them red meat. The real agenda is being driven by massively powerful and wealthy special interests, dark money groups that are driving the agenda. Just think about it. I'll put a link to that in the description. It's not about culture wars. It's about money and power. And these people know what they're doing. They know that if we keep burning fossil fuels as we have been doing, that the results for humanity will be catastrophic. This is the darkness that we are fighting against. I found that piece so stunning because it was all right there in black and white in one short paragraph. And I have been saying this literally for decades. And there it is. That is why they are funneling massive amounts of money into dark money groups and the GOP. It's not about the culture war crap. The increasing energies here are really shining light on the darkness. It's bringing it to our attention. It's like we have to see it now. We have to confront it. We have to deal with it, which is something I've said many times in the past. This darkness that exists within humanity, and often it's hatred of others and belligerence. I think there's enough people here that are carrying light that will be overcome. And like I said in my episode on Pluto and Aquarius, that's what's going to happen. There is going to be accountability for all those people, and their motives and actions are going to be exposed to the public. I think it's fantastic. That's exactly what needs to happen. That's all I wanted to share for now. It's just something really interesting to think about that I've been pondering. Like I said, please check out my intentions. I would like to see millions of people doing those. It would change the world really quickly. Fox News is just the beginning. If you are interested in an astrology reading, I'll put a link to more information about that in the episode description. I'll put links to articles and other episodes I referenced in the description as well. Take care, all the best, and we'll talk to you again soon.